Today we are going to talk about my top 5 horror reads of this year so far. 2 of them did not come out this year, but they had stuff relevant this year. So without further ado, the first one, which is not out yet, it will be out in September, is Daphne. It is a slasher horror by Josh Malerman. It was fan-frickin-tastic. One of the themes in the book is anxiety, and the book gave me anxiety reading it. Like, you're just on the edge of your seat wanting to know what's going to happen next. It takes place in this town, and it centers around this high school girls basketball team. And the town has like a weird history about this woman, Daphne, who you don't want to think about, because if you think about Daphne, she starts to become corporal and real and may just come after you. Not for fun. To, you might die. Alright, so, and it was, it was such a killer thriller read. I really loved it. I hope you guys love it too when you get to read it. Talking about these going forward too, I'm gonna go from, these are all my favorites, but we're going from not worst, it's not worst, from good to amazing off the charts. The next one was Lake of the Dead by Andre Bierke. This book was originally written in 1942, and it was released for the first time ever in the US. It was known as one of Norway's best crime fiction novels. It's not just crime though, it's crime, it's horror, there's occult and paranormal in it, and it was such a good story, and it holds up today. I loved this book, and look at the cover. Lady is floating to the bottom of the lake, all these hands of the dead reaching out to get her. We'll read the synopsis so you can get a little bit about it. So it was technically released this year in the US for the first time. So that's when I was saying how it was like, oh, not all these were from this year. Well, this was from this year, but not originally, and it wasn't ever available in English before. So, deep in the darkest part of the Norwegian woods stands Dead Man's Cabin, where 110 years ago, a madman slew his sister and her lover, throwing their decapitated corpses into the lake before drowning himself to join them in death. Ever since, the cabin has been cursed, and anyone who spends the night there is possessed by the killer's spirit and infected with his madness. I highly recommend it. It's not very long, so it's on the shorter side, Lake of the Dead. 187 pages. So if you want something that's short and sweet and fantastic, Lake of the Dead. Next up was Joe Hill's The Black Phone Stories. This was such an awesome surprise. So I picked this up because I wanted to read this in anticipation of the movie, and the Black Phone Story is very short. It has all these other stories in it that were fantastic. Joe Hill's such a phenomenal writer, just his grip on words and describing things and where he takes you in his stories. Some of them, not all of them are horror. Some of them are just actually like kind of sweet. I cannot recommend this enough if you like short stories, if you like horror, and if you are a Joe Hill fan. If you haven't read this yet, I definitely recommend picking it up. And it's also like a nice taste of the author and their kind of like variety of what they can do when you read a collection of short stories by him. Next up, we have Below by Laurel Hightower. This book was awesome. This is another shorty. Little novella. And it features my favorite cryptid, Mothman. Honestly, she's great. I cannot wait to read more of Laurel Hightower's work. So I'm going to have to definitely pick some up. This book is about this lady. She's driving through West Virginia because she's going to a horror conference with her friends. She stops off at a diner, and then she goes to get back in her car, and when she gets to her car, there's this weird noise coming from it, even though it's not on, and she's like, what is that? That's weird. And she meets this truck driver, and he's like, weird stuff happens and stuff like that in this area all the time. And so she doesn't really think too much of it. And so then, you know, goes to get on the road, and this horrible snowstorm starts up, and she's driving behind this truck driver. At some point she looks up and she doesn't see the semi-truck anymore, and she looks over and she looks around, and all of a sudden she sees it jackknifing across the frickin' freeway that they're on, and then it goes over the side and off this bridge. And then her car shorts out, the electrical stops working, it won't turn over, and she's like, what the crap? So then she has to decide, is she gonna go help this guy or try to just save herself and get out of there? And that is Below. And it is a wild frickin' ride, and I can't recommend this book enough. It's awesome. If you love Mothman like I do, and are looking for a new fantastic horror author, Laurel Hightower, check it out. And then I think if you have watched my channel, you can probably guess what my number one book is. But if you don't, welcome, welcome. I'm Sin. I love Josh Malerman a lot. His books are amazing. My number one horror read, and this could be categorized as so many other things outside of horror. It is so much wider than that. Ghoul in the Cape, absolutely amazing. This book takes you on a road trip of epic proportions. It's a spiritual journey. You meet Ghoul in the Cape, and they're the friends that you didn't know you needed until you met them. And it's this wild, just caper. It's a caper. When's the last time you had a caper? Well, this one, obviously the other books that I had were a lot shorter. This one is a chunk. But it's my number one, and honestly, I can't wait to reread this. But you know, it's really big, so it might be a minute before I get back into it, because I feel like there's so many scenes in it that I want to revisit, and so many conversations. And I think something about it that spoke to me so much was like some of the conversations that were had, whether in the car driving or at a bar where there's some very seedy characters, you know. One of them might have been the devil. I don't know. But yeah, this book was absolutely a masterpiece and fantastic, and probably one of Josh's best books ever. I love a lot of his books, but this is the best book ever. Freaking cannot say enough good things about it. I'm hoping they bring it to mass market, because right now it is very expensive, and I know most people can't afford to just go buy a $75 book. So I get that. But hopefully if this does come where it's more affordable, if you guys like Josh Malerman, Ghoul in the Cape, and I will read a little bit of it in case you guys don't know about this book or the story. Here we go. The number one of my horror heart this year. The knot is nigh, the Cape tells Ghoul in a dark corner of a Manhattan tavern. The knot, a nefarious celestial entity capable of tipping the balance of good and bad for all on Earth. Or so the Cape claims. They must leave at once. Travel west. Will Ghoul go with him? Will Ghoul help the Cape outpace this horror while spreading the word of its arrival to everyone they meet? So begins the adventure of a lifetime as Ghoul in the Cape travel across America and beyond, picking up other eccentrics along the way, even as they duck the knot's many dark agents. A destructor the size of a planet, a man made entirely of flowing blood, a knife that reflects time and space as it cuts, and so much more. I love this book, you guys. I love it. So yes, if you're interested in any of these books, I will have links down below. They are affiliate links, so a little bit goes to me, and then it also goes to support indie bookstores, and you can choose which indie bookstore you'd like to support, so that's pretty cool. If you guys are into horror and like scary books, the next video coming up will also be horror related, so stick around, check it out. If you had fun hanging out, boop that like button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff. So until next time.